Right. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I think we're going to get started here. It's been a couple minutes to give time to some of the folks that had to get back in, but welcome. This is Data Nerd Days 2.0. We're in the bonus round again, and you are here to chat with us about network performance monitoring. As I'm sure if you've seen in other sessions today, you've seen this slide, safe harbor, just be sure to understand the status of our forward-looking statements and things like that as a public company. So what are we doing, right? We're talking about, is it the network, specifically around our newer launch of network performance monitoring, which came out August 25th of this year, about 2 months ago in a couple of days. 2 months and change, I guess we'll say. My name is Zach Muchler. I'm a senior technology architect here at New Relic, and I'm joined today by a colleague on my team. I'll let him introduce himself.
My name is Mark Netterfield. I've been at New Relic for just a little while now, but I've been doing monitoring and observability for quite a while.
Awesome. Yeah, and along with Mark, both of us work on a team of architects at New Relic where we sit kind of in between product and sales, and we work on bringing solutions to market. We focused very heavily in our careers, specifically for Mark and myself, on network monitoring for a very long time. We've been in network monitoring spaces. I've been a network engineer. We've owned this space and been active in it throughout multiple different companies. And this is something we have a lot of fun and passion around. So definitely excited to chat with you about it today. So during this session, we're going to talk a little bit about, what exactly is NPM in New Relic 1. And the idea there is really to give you context of what we're doing with networking today, with the features and the additions that we've added to our platform. And then we're also going to go into a hands-on lab where you can actually, use your own New Relic account in a demo environment that will spin up with you, that will allow you to kind of see how it all works, right? And once we've gone through a basic deployment, we will then be able to show you how that looks, right? So once you've deployed and added some devices into New Relic, what does that look like in New Relic? How do I visually, work through that data and make use of it, basically? And so, what did we do, right? So the whole idea of why we approached this challenge in our monitoring strategy as a company is, we really want to bridge the gap between teams, right? So, the entire industry has been chasing, breaking down data silos. We've all said that. Every vendor has said that for years. And, some of us are really good at it. I mean, I tend to think New Relic's one of the more exceptional vendors that really hits that nail on the head. That being said, the goal here is less about data silos and much more about team silos. And the idea is, when an incident happens in a environment, typically a very common pattern is that no matter what the incident is, a network engineering team gets paged and they get pulled into the incident response, and they're pulled in order to start troubleshooting. And sometimes they find that it is a problem that they can help with, and other times they find that it has absolutely nothing to do with them. But the point is that they're always paged. And the reason, the catalyst for that, typically, is that the people that initially respond to incidents don't have access or visibility into the data they need to make that decision on their own, right? And so our goal with NPM is to bring enough network telemetry into New Relic to decorate the data we already have through APM browser, synthetics, et cetera, infrastructure, and give our users, our traditional users, right, our DevOps, our SREs, our app devs, right, our operators, people that have already been in New Relic for a long time, give these engineers enough data and enough insights and context that they will immediately be able to say, is it the network or not? Or give them a signal that says, okay, this could be the network or not. And what that does, right, is it streamlines your detection. It improves your mean time to response by allowing you to immediately apply the right resources, not paging people at 2 a.m. if they don't need to be paged. Giving people that single source of truth to start the troubleshooting process out of. And the downstream of that is an increase in operational efficiency. And then, of course, we want to be cognizant of the fact that we're providing network telemetry, which can be very complex in the modern network, right, to folks who traditionally aren't network engineers. And we don't want to require someone to get a network. You don't need to go to Cisco and get a CCNP to certification in order to understand what we're doing here, right? So we're going to also, through the work we're doing, we're giving you access natively without anything you need to add to things like our anomaly detection engines, which give you the ability to immediately understand, if something's different or changed in the network, that's problematic generally, right? Or it's an indicator, it's a leading indicator of a potential problem, because change is, for the most part, the driving factor for most of our incidents. So you don't need to understand anything about BGP to understand that, a sharp change or a difference in, BGP routes could be why all of a sudden you're not able to access a remote API or something like that. Yeah, so I think, Mark, is this one yours? Sorry, I can't see our speaker notes. So.
Nah, this one's you. Keep going.
All right, I'm going to keep rolling then. So what did we do so far, right? So whenever you launch any product, you have to do it in phases, and we have to talk about, where do we start, where do we want to go, and ultimately what our golden unicorn goal is. So the first place we started was the on-premises environments, right? The data centers, the branch offices, the customers that have been either planning for or going through, or maybe even they've finished the cloud migration, but they're still hybrid, right? So we can't forget that there's a still very large, significant portion of our industry is still on premises. And so out of the box, or out of the gate, we support SNMP v1, v2c, and v3, which is, if you don't know, all the versions of SNMP there are. And we do that for both polling SNMP and also SNMP trap collection. We also have native support for flow telemetry. Usually you'll hear that called NetFlow. Cisco invented it, so they get to name it. But it's also known as SFlow or IPFix. All of the derivatives of flow are supported. And we put all of that data goes into TDP, our telemetry data platform, which is where all of your other data in New Relic lives. And what does that mean for you? It means that we're storing your network data inside of a database that was built around the idea of observability and high cardinality, meaning that we're keeping as many attributes as you want in order to make sure that you can ask any questions later. And we're keeping them for a very long time for the most part, with very, very solid amount of granularity. Again, we talked about the platform analytics tools being available to you out of the box. We could probably decorate that discussion a little bit later whenever we get into the hands-on part, and the anomaly detection as well. The one thing that we always want to double click on when we talk about the anomaly detection is that it's truly no configuration required, right? We just have it turned on. And so as you send us data, we're going to turn that data into what we, at New Relic, we conceptualize it into what's called an entity. And entities all have a definition of, for each entity, there's a different set of, contextual golden signals for that entity. And our anomaly engine just watches those all the time. And so, it's very, very low calorie, very easy to get up and running. There we go.
So the gateway between your on-prem infrastructure and the New Relic SaaS platform is a container that our partner Kintik developed. They call it K-Translate. And so the idea is that you would deploy this Docker container into your environment and then configure it based on what you want to get out of it. So you can send in SNMP traps, or you can do SNMP polling from there. You can do flow data goes through the Docker container, and it'll decorate it and make it so that all the data gets standardized and moves in. So The K-Translate container will then forward the data that we need over to New Relic through our various APIs. You want to hit the next slide, Zach?
Yep. Sorry, I thought I clicked and it didn't go.
No problem. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go through a lab exercise to get you a little bit familiarized with the K-Translate container and kind of how to configure it, how to get it working. It's a pretty fast process. So really within a few minutes, you'll be able to get it so that you're sending data into your New Relic account. For the purposes of this demo, we're using a tool that's going to spin up a little virtual environment with some fake routers and switches and things in it. So you'll need to have your New Relic account information ready to go, the license key so that we can send the data into it, and then you have to have full user permissions in your account to be able to go through the whole process with us. If you don't have those things, then you can kind of watch and follow along, but to get the most out of it, you want to have your account ready.
Yeah, and also if you look at the chat, John, who's with us today, had posted earlier, there's the sign up for a free account. And so, if you do want to go more of a hands-on, if you don't have a sandbox environment, it's real simple to just toss a new account in. I actually did it last night because I had forgotten to make a test account for this day, and it took me like a couple of minutes, so it's pretty straightforward. I did put the link here for Instruct into our chat. So if everyone wants to, jump on there with us, we'll move over. So we're going to go into our Instruct platform. And when you get into Instruct, you're going to see a UI such as this, right? And basically, this is just a learning management system that we like to use at New Relic that allows us to, share really cool information with you. And the big piece that you want to look at is this, I guess this is kind of purple maybe, start track button here over on the right underneath start learning. And when you click that, it's going to start up a new Instruct lab environment for you. So basically it's spinning up it's not EC2, it's actually Google, but it's going to spin up a GCE instance in the background with Docker and a couple of other little goodies, as Mark had mentioned. And as you can tell on the bottom right there, it takes about a minute to spin up. You keep your eye on the bottom right. That'll turn into a button that says, start or get next or something like that in a minute. But point being, when this is going, we have a full sandbox environment. While you're waiting on that, if you need to, let me see if I can find my other window. There it is. If you need to get your license key and your account ID, there's a couple of different ways to do that inside of our UI. So here I'm, logged into a brand new account inside of New Relic. I've never sent really any data to it at all. So you could go, underneath your little account icon at the top. There's a drop down, and you could click on API keys and go in there and grab an API key, and then you could kind of go look around for your account ID. But there's kind of a little shortcut we could use just for our purposes here today. If you click on Add More Data, and then scroll to the very bottom, there's the guided installation flow for network performance monitoring, right? And that's what we're doing here today. So you have a tile for SNMP and NetFlow. So the network flow one is the one I'm going to grab, and I'm going to click on that. I'm going to say, this is the account I want to send data to, and it literally does not matter what you choose here. Just I'm just picking the first thing in the drop down, and I'm clicking validate because what I really want is down here. Right? And so if you look in here, this command that comes out from Docker, and we'll kind of talk more about what this command is and stuff here in a little bit when we get into the lab, but this has the license key I need and the account ID I need, right? So if you don't already have that, this is a kind of a cool trick. You can just come in here, click copy, throw that on a text or a notepad to the side, and have it ready for later. Once you have that, you can just X out. You don't really need to do anything with that for now. So at this point, assuming that people are following along, we should be about the time that we've got our lab up and running and we're into a start environment. So when you click start, it's going to take you into your first track. And the first thing to know, if you don't see this file right here, this root SNMP base YAML, give it couple seconds, and then click this little refresh icon up here. Sometimes there's a script that runs behind the scenes that builds that file, and sometimes it just takes them 10 seconds or so before that's actually available. It's just a little delay in the system. But as soon as that's ready to go, you're ready to start your lab. Now, I will call out, right? We are moving a little quick today. These labs are going to be available to you at any time. Like, we're just going to leave them up, and you can come run them whenever you feel like it. And as mentioned earlier, the session itself is going to be recorded, or it actively is being recorded, and it will be available on the Hopin platform for, I think, like 2 or 3 days. And then after that, you'll get an email from New Relic from us that says, like, thanks for attending our conference. Here's a link to where we're keeping the recordings, and we'll host them for you for longer term, so you can come back and reference this whenever you feel like it. So once we're up and running, what we want to do is kind of start with a discovery, right? So whenever we're building a monitoring profile with SNMP, the first thing you want to do is, tell me what you want to monitor. And the way we do that is through a process we call discovery. So when you click on your file over here, it's going to load up this YAML file. And inside of the YAML file, we've got a couple of different major sections, right? So if you don't know YAML, it's basically just, a nested language that makes JSON look a little weird. But essentially, right, we've got these parents, and then inside of a parent, it indented later are, kind of child objects. Is an extremely inaccurate but conceptually good way to understand what YAML is. That's not exactly how it works, but if you're just trying to wrap your head around it, it's good enough. At the very top, we have a devices section. Right now, that's null. That's what we're trying to fix, right? We're going to do a discovery to fix that. Below that, we have a trap configuration. This is where we're setting up, the basic default trap listener. Below that, this is the discovery section that we care about right now in this particular track, right? And so there's a couple of things in here that, really we want to call out, right? So the first is the CIDR section. So for those who, aren't aware, maybe you didn't come from network engineering, or it's been a long time since you took your intro to network class or something like that. CIDR is classless interdomain routing, and the S is just there because it's plural. And basically, it's just like a shorthand way to write out an IP range. And so the range that's there now is the range we're going to scan against, but you could provide your own, in your own environment. Obviously, you'd want to work with your network engineering team, or whoever, maybe it's yourself that knows, these are where my devices are, this is the range I want. It doesn't have to be a range like this. If you want to just provide a list of IP addresses, you can do so and just end them with a /32, right? And that's just saying this one IP, which is also a really good way to target things like firewalls. The reason is during a discovery, the process that we're using is that we are doing a TCP port scan on an IP address. And if any of those ports respond as open and listening, we consider that a live IP. And then we do an SNMP walk against that IP address to try and get basic system MIB stuff: sys uptime, sys name, sys description, sys object identifier, very basic things that every device should respond to for SNMP. So in a situation like a firewall, you typically don't want those to just respond to random port scans, right? So they have a better security posture and they're locked down. To bypass that initial port scan and just do the SNMP, just give us the IP address with a /32 and it'll get you right in there. So once you have your CIDR, and you can put multiple, it doesn't have to just be one. You put as many as you want there. You can keep moving. These are the ports that we're going to scan against. SNMP defaults to 161, so that's what we have. And then you can provide multiple community strings if you need to. We're keeping it very simple with the default public, and we're going to specifically scan against SNMP devices that are simulated using V2C. If you wanted to provide V3 config, we could do that as well. And then these toggles down here are just saying, as we find devices, let's make sure we add them. Let's also make sure we add the MIBs to the MIBs enabled section here, so we're actively collecting the data correctly. and a couple of other basic settings. We have a generic poll time. In this lab, we've set this poll time to 30 seconds just so we can quickly grab some data for you. By default, in a production environment, this will default itself to 60 seconds. You can configure this to whatever you want. It can't go faster than 30 seconds, but you can go any interval higher. And once we have devices, you can actually set individual devices at their own interval as well if you want to have a real granular experience there. And so given all that, what we're looking at, though, is we're going to, essentially run a discovery against this IP range, right? So we got 10.10.00.27. If we, just copy this command that's in our kind of right-hand sidebar here and look at this on our terminal, this is just a quick little Docker command that's going to basically say, let's show you the Docker network that we have, and let's pull out the subnet we're using. Right, we're using a 10.10.00.24. It works really well. It's conveniently overlapping our /27. The reason we do a /27 in the lab is just because it's faster. Right, 24 is a larger subnet, and I know where the IPs are, and I don't need all those extras because there's nothing there to discover. Now, you can also look at, the ports that are currently exposed. That's the next command down that you can copy and paste. And basically what this is going to do is, did I not hit enter? I think I hit shift. There we go. So what this is showing you is that we've got 3 different devices running, right? We've got a Cisco router, a Cisco switch, and a Linksys router, and they're all exposing port 161 UDP, which, as we mentioned, is the default port for SNMP polling. Pretty straightforward, right? And so now that we've kind of talked about the how, right? How a discovery works. Now let's do it. So the first thing, and this is like, if you remember anything, right? Remember this, always pull a new container. This is just, basic housekeeping maintenance in our Docker world. But what we have noticed is that, we do a lot of releases with our partner Kintik. Pretty often, and most of them are to fix small bugs or feature request things and stuff like that. So if you ever have a situation where something doesn't seem to be working the way you want, take a second, pull the latest container with this Docker pull command that we have here, and then stop your container, start a new one, and see if that fixes it, right? A lot of times it will. We've seen some really good success. It's the same concept as like in an agent world, right? Like, have you updated to the latest version, step 1. Now that we have that container image local on our host, we are then going to start a discovery, right? And the discovery is a very short-lived container. Basically what that means is that once the discovery job is done, the container deletes itself. And so during the discovery, again, it's going to scan those IP addresses. It's going to attempt SNMP communication with the different devices, and the ones that it's successful with, it will then add back into our SNMP-based YAML file, right? So I've already copied, and at this point, we're not adding license keys or account IDs or anything, right? We're just doing a very local thing. We're scanning devices and updating a local YAML file, that's it. And so we're gonna copy this command and paste it, hit enter, and everything comes to standard out here. And there we go. This is kind of what you want to see, right? Like whenever you see like a big blob of OIDs here, that means we got a good success. Towards the very end, really what we're looking for is a line like this right here. So you'll find something like here where it says like we checked X number of IPs and it took this long. And then you'll sit very close to that. You'll find a line that says adding X new SNMP devices to the configuration, X replaced from Y, right? And so success, we found our 3 devices. Everything looks good. If we go to our code tab, there we go, automatically refreshes itself. Here's our Cisco 1941 router. Here's our Cisco Catalyst switch. And below that is our ISP gateway, which is, I believe that's the Linksys. Let's get to, go ahead and click check on here once you're ready and we've got your discovery done, and we'll talk about this file on the next track, but we want to keep momentum here. So we'll go ahead and click check, and that's going to basically just load the next challenge for us. while that's loading, this one won't take as long as the last one, but there it goes. Yeah, it should take less than 5 seconds like that one just did. And so when we get in here, right, the next thing we want to do is start collecting SNMP data. Let's see, Don says, are we able to ingest this data to the New Relic FedRAMP environment? Let me validate that for you. I know we're going through FedRAMP authorization right now for SNMP data and for our flow data. Mark or John, if y'all can comment on that. I can't remember if we got that yet or if we're still pending.
I'm in the same spot. I know Josh was talking about it today. So
yeah.
Oh, there we go. John says it's in.
There we go. So leave it to product marketing to know when they can sell something. I love it. So Don, to your point, and good to have you here, by the way. Yeah, we're good for FedRAMP now. So if you are in a FedRAMP compliant framework or environment, welcome. Let's have some fun. So looking at, oh no, it's not an interruption, John. I like the interaction. Looking at this file, there's a basic section, and this is all very well documented. And I think that Mark actually put a link to this earlier in the chat. But in this file, when we add a discovery or when we add a device via discovery, you get a couple of things, right? And so a lot of it's like automatic mapping and taking the pain and the toil of like configuring and setting up MIB files and stuff away from you, and we take care of that for you, right? And so what we've got here is through the discovery process, we found the sys name, which is coming back as device name. We found the device IP. That's what we passed the check on. We got an SNMP community string there. Further down, we're following port 161. And then we have an OID marked out as 136.141.91.1047 there on row 9. And that is more commonly referred to as a sys OID or a system object identifier. And basically that is how every device that responds to SNMP has its own object identifier, sys OID. And this particular one, this 1047, comes back as a Cisco 1941. If you look down on line 34, right, this Cisco Catalyst switch, which is a 3750, has a different OID. And that's very common, right? Like, basically, it's just the way that SNMP knows what device you are. We use that to bring us back into matching profiles, right? So behind the scenes, we've got a library, and it's actually open source, so we're constantly looking for additions to it. But behind the scenes, we have a library that says, these are, the different types of devices we know about, and when you find one with this system object identifier, match it to this profile, and these are the metrics that we're going to pull for that particular device, right? And so this one is the Cisco ASR profile. I'll take the blame for naming it like that. I should have called it Cisco Router because it's full of ISRs as well. But point being that inside of that profile, there's all the common OIDs, metrics that you can pull that are common across all these different device types. That way, you can just plug and play, right? You can bring us Cisco routers, and they just work essentially. The other piece of that is that we tag this as a Kintik router. That helps us at New Relic understand whenever we get the data, what it is and how to turn it into something tangible. There is a section for optional user tags. If you're used to using New Relic, this would, depending on what part of the New Relic platform you use, these are tags, or if you use like the infrastructure agent, you'll hear these referred to as custom attributes. It's all the same thing. It's a way to decorate extra metadata to your telemetry. Discovered MIBs, this is a section that's very much, what's the question? This is a section that's very much informational, right? So what this is when we scan, these are the MIBs that we found out of this profile that we need to add to the global config, which is at the very bottom, right? So if you notice at the very beginning, the only thing in this MIBs enabled was the if MIB, and through discovery, it basically went through and added all these others that it found. And that's what tells the container, this is what you're going to scan for.
Zach, just for the sake of demonstration, Frank is asking if you could throw a user tag in there.
Oh, sure. So
There you
let's
go.
say environment, and we'll call it Data Nerd Days. There we go. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea, Frank. We should have had you help us build this. And then below that are additional options that are documented again in the link that Mark shared earlier. Same thing, very repeatable across all the other devices. Now, before I move on, make sure I remember to click save because I did change and add a tag. There we go. Okay, so now that we've discovered the SNMP devices in my network, what I want to do is set up a container that's not short-lived, right? It's, I guess, the opposite of short-lived is long-running, right? And it's going to stay, and it's going to be what's doing the actual polling, right? It's going to be doing the actual interval polling and reaching out and asking devices about themselves and their metrics. Now, this is where we need that license key and that account ID. And if you're in the EU, you're also going to want to tag the region here. So we've got a command here on the right. And what we want to do is copy this. And on your tabs at the top of this lab, you have a scratchpad option. And this is just a file that I thought was going to be multi-line, but it didn't. But I'll tell you what, we're going to Control A and Command A, Command V, depends on if you're a Windows or Mac user. And I'll copy and paste this because it's easier to read when it's multi-line. But what I'm going to do, right, is exactly what you should be doing. And I'm going to take my license key that I collected earlier, and I'm just going to pop that right in here. Remember to get rid of that leading $sign because we're not doing a variable. We're just putting a straight key in. And then I'm also going to take my account ID and put that in. And then specifically, like that, we default to US. And so, if you're running this inside of our UI and you're in the US, you won't even see this. But if you're in the EU, you will. But I'll just put US right there. Very straightforward. Again, if you're in the European data center with your account, you just want the letters EU. Yeah, so that's my command, right? It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to copy this now that I've edited it. Okay, I'm not going to say that again. Now that I've changed it and put the license key and the account ID and I've updated the region, we're ready to rock and roll here. So we're going to copy this out. We're going to jump into our beautiful terminal window, paste it, and when I hit enter, gives just a second, and the container's up and running. Right? I can quickly just do like a Docker PS, and I can see that I've got that new container running right there with the new image. And I could also, on the right here, I've got a command that'll show you how to do your Docker logs off of this container, and we can just watch it, right? And so it is actively working, right? This is exactly what you want to see. You want to see huge amounts of blocks of text like this. This is beautiful for us. If you see like, tiny little things that say cannot connect or cannot collect, that's always a red flag. But when you see like these big blocks, that means that things are processing exactly as they should. So I'm going to Control C out of there to get out of that that Docker logs UI. And we are actively sending data to New Relic right now, right? So if it wasn't for Zach talking for 20 minutes, right, we would have been up and running in 2 minutes, right? That's how low calorie this install is. I'm going to go ahead and click check down here. And the next thing I want to do is on top of SNMP, right, I want to do flow data. Frank, go ahead and type your question in. And don't ever, for everybody else in the call, right, keep those questions coming. You're not interrupting at all. So as soon as we get into flow data, the flow data install is super simple. This one is there's no discovery phase, right? Because we've already annotated our devices and we've already got, we're not targeting anything in flow because we're listening, if that makes sense, right? So instead of a system where we need to reach out and ask a device about itself and go through that effort, we're doing an unsolicited listening setup where we're just going to sit back, relax, and when flows come to us, we'll process them and forward them into our event API. So pretty straightforward there. Same thing as last time. We're going to, I love that you did a printer, Frank. I love it. It's A lot of people don't know there's actually a fairly good printer MIB for network printers that'll show you like low, like when your toners are low, like cyan is low and stuff like that. So it's pretty neat. But in this command, we've also got our account ID. So we're going to drop that in here. And I only said that first because that's the first thing I copied, but you also want your license key. Paste that. And then again, we want to change that region tag to whatever makes sense for where you're at. Now, the one thing that I do want to call out here is this NF source, right? So there's multiple different types of flow. And this is very well documented on our website, on our doc site. We actually break down like, you know, if you have this type of flow, then you use this NF source tag, right? Because, you know, like for example, JFlow, right? JFlow is, you know, the Juniper style of flow, but it actually, you know, equates to NetFlow v5, I believe. And so the idea, though, is that the version of flow you send us, is the container can only listen to one version at a time. And so in a large environment, or maybe even a small environment, but if you've got like a hybrid situation where there's multiple different types of flow, you can set up a deal where you know, you might have a couple of containers and like NetFlow v5 goes to this container, v9 goes to this container, IPFix goes to this container, something like that. And so that's the concept of that. And so what we've seen every once in a while, it's extremely rare, but it is kind of a good call out for y'all. Understand that, you know, that is something that might pop up, right? When it's not, you do need to make sure you match the container to the flow type. And the reason for that is behind the scenes, and while I'm talking, I'm gonna paste and start this container up here. The reason that matters is because the protocols behind the NetFlow versions, there's, you know, fields basically, and different fields exist in different flow protocols, and so we have to make sure we can, you know, process those correctly. So that's why, you know, it kind of matters. NetFlow v9 and IPFix, which is technically v10, do work, but we really recommend keeping them separate because at some point we might make some enhancements to one or the other, and so you don't want to be sending IPFix and v9 to the same container. Yeah, the other piece to know, it's at the very bottom of the lab section over here on the right. By default, we listen on port 9995, which is the default port for SFlow. I believe, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the latest, or the, you know, as of recent history, Cisco has kind of adopted that as their default port, but historically it was 2055 for them. And so if you do need to change the port, you know, in addition to like, you know, NF source, just put NF port and put whatever port you need to listen to there as well. Let me do a quick Docker PS, make sure that's still up and running. Looks great. Yeah, nothing to worry about there. And so I'm going to click check. And right now, all we did was just stand up a container and it's just listening, right? It's sitting there, it's waiting for the party to come to it. And as this loads up the next challenge, this one will take just a second. What's actually happening behind the scenes right now is we're spinning up another container that's going to synthesize flow telemetry and start flooding that that container we just built, right? And so that's where we're going to get all our fun data from. While we're waiting on that, let me find my other. Mark, have you been looking at our account? Are we getting data?
I have not logged into it yet. So.
Love it. All right, let me hit refresh. Cross our fingers. Hey, there we go. Now we're talking. Okay, while I'm waiting on the flow, yeah, I can still see setting up challenge. Okay, so this is New Relic, right? Oh, as soon as I start saying that, hold on, let me just click start real quick. Yeah, no, we're going to go back to New Relic. So we're done with the lab for now. If you can read this at your own, but I'm going to walk you through it, and I just don't want to keep flipping back and forth between different UIs. So back on New Relic, this is what we have, right? So I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit, maybe a command plus, give you a little bit of, well, maybe one less. There we go. Give you a little zoom so you can read a little bit better. But, you know, now we have objects, we have entities, we have things to look at, right? So out of our 3 devices, we've got a known profile as a switch for Cisco Catalyst. We know that this is a router, but that Linksys, right? That's a home device. That's something that we traditionally always had sitting on our desk or underneath something in the corner. The ISP gateway is just something that we're not quite sure about. So you're going to end up with something called a Kintik Default. And I think I haven't read Frank's full question yet, but looking at Mark's response, I think this might be what's going on there. And so what happens with a Kintik Default, right? You'll get this little call out, missing match profile, see overview page for details. If you click on it, it's going to take you to this new UI, and it's going to tell you, hey, this is what's going on with this, right? Basically, it's going to, all of this text is our way of saying, this is how we fix this problem. And essentially, what this means is that you've brought us a device type that isn't in our profile library right now. And the real big piece that really matters for this is that you can submit a pull request to update your own profile, or you can just go to the repo and open an issue. Pretty straightforward, right? And I can actually show you right here. If we go look, it's a pretty common thing, right? We go, Mark and myself, as well as people from Kintik, go through this pretty commonly and go through and knock those out. It's very important to note that the S&P profiles, that's a Kintik repo, right? And so if you're trying to open tickets with our support queue, like typically you go to like support.newrelic.com or whatever, that's not exactly going to get you the fastest response time. Most likely what's going to happen is there's going to be a little bit back and forth, and ultimately they're going to tell you have to open an issue on that repo. So just go to the repo first, right? That's why we've got that link here. And in some cases, there's a situation where you've brought us an entirely new type of device that even at New Relic, we don't have a definition for. A printer is actually one of them, right? We've specifically have not had a customer come to us and say like, hey, I've got printers in my office building that they're business critical. I got to have them. Especially in the remote world, right? It's just not a thing right now. And so we haven't built an entity for them yet, but if we want to, we can, right? You can, either submit your own PR, or you can, if you have an account team at New Relic, you can contact them and they'll walk you through how to get it done. Most likely they're going to contact Mark and myself and we'll build it on the inside. Or if you go to our Explorers Hub, which is basically our community forum, and call out for help there, we'll also get pulled into that conversation. And so there's multiple pathways for support. You're not out there by yourself alone. Now, the other piece of the lab, real quick, that I wanted to jump into is whenever you get in here, right, everything that we've looked at out of the box is, singular. And to be fair, in this demo, we've really only added single devices. But the thing that you want to look at is I'm clicking too fast. At the very top right of our page, we have this new feature called Instant Observability. And this is a portal that we launched a couple of weeks ago. And it basically is where you can go to get pre-built out-of-the-box experiences, right? And for us, we can come in here and we can say, something like network. And, there's a couple of different things. There's a Kintik Firehose, which is a little bit different. That's a situation when you're actually a Kintik customer and you're using their platform and you want to forward that data to us. We absolutely accept that as well. But then we've got these 3 others, right? And you see this little powered by Kintik logo here, and we'll add some more as time allows. But right now, these are our first 3. We've got a network data ingest and cardinality, network flow devices, network routers and switches. And if you click on any of these, you'll just, get a basic overview of what it is. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can dig into. But just for speed and efficiency, just click installed as quick start. And you can click done, because we've already done the instrumentation, so we can skip that. And then I'm just going to click off of there, right? And if I want to do it again, and maybe I'll do the flow one. The flow one's always kind of fun to play with. Click that, click install, and done again, right? This is just because I'm moving quick. I'll slow down just for a second. This is basically like, how do I install this? I don't need to do that because we already did. So I'm clicking done, and it's installing a dashboard and alerts. So, out of the box, I might not know anything about Flow, but I know that now I have a good analysis dashboard and alerts to build off of. So if I go click on dashboards, there they are, right? And it's, I know I'm moving quick. It's going to take a little bit before this data flows in. The demo gods have cursed me. All right, fair enough. Let's go back to, let's do routers and switches. We've already got that data. Scroll, there it is. Install. But I mean, look at this, right? Like, that's less than 5 seconds. You know, like we're moving here. Time to value on this is insane, y'all. But there we go, right? Out of the box, we've got, you know, a very basic, high level, what's the health of my routers and switches. Mark and I are actually already looking at some improvements to this dashboard that we'll hopefully put in place before the end of the week. But the idea being that you don't have to build this, right? It's community driven. Now, that being said, it is community driven. If you want to help build this, make a PR, contact us, open an issue on the repo, right? Partner. Definitely want to, you know, make this a better experience for everyone, right? Especially with those profiles. The more profiles you can bring us, the better it helps the world. Because once I build a profile, you know, for Frank on, you know, network printer 32, I don't know what it is. I haven't been able to pause and look, but maybe it's, you know, I don't know, a brother printer or something like that. Once I build that profile, I'll never have to build it again. And every single customer that ever brings us that profile it'll just work, you know? And so that's the idea of the, like, what we've built, right? We've built this to be a very community driven approach to help you get, you know, enough data, again, to decorate your environment and immediately start saying, is this the network? Yes or no? You know, future plans, just to quickly talk roadmap in the last minute or two. We're looking to add AWS VPC flow log analysis, right? So whenever you're in the cloud, you've got those AWS VPCs that, you know, a lot of times it's extremely hard to analyze that data. We're going to make it easy. We're going to bring it down and treat it just like regular flow data. We're also looking to expand the container, the K-Translate container, expand its support and also allow it to collect and forward syslogs off of your network devices. So you have like that one container that's going to be able to do all kinds of cool stuff. And that'll forward those into New Relic logs. So you'll be able to, you know, use our logs UI to process and analyze your syslog data, which depending on the type of device, but especially around like firewalls, load balancers, stuff like that, there's a lot of really great data inside of syslogs. And then after that, the other big, and I'm saying after, after's not the right word, in addition to, I'm not saying that's a priority order. In addition to that, we're also looking at integrating with Kintik's synthetics platform. So we have our own synthetics platform, very focused on like web, application, API performance type stuff. Kintik has a synthetic platform that is extremely focused on networking. And so it'll show you like between point A and point B, we're going to synthesize network traffic for this random application, whatever you pick. And it's going to show you like every single hop of the network, everything that could, every path it could possibly take, any kind of jitter, packet loss, latency, any delays or errors across the network you own and, you know, places you might not own in the ISP layer and things like that. And so we're very excited to bring all this to market. And hopefully y'all are excited to use it and we can get going on that. So if there's more questions or if there's anything I missed, Mark, is there anything that's hanging out there? Any dangling participles?
Frank's gonna probably raise an issue and get us a laser jet mid-walk, hopefully.
I love it. Yeah, no, I am all about, I don't know why, but I just have a random affinity for monitoring network printers. And I think it's from my very first job in IT was desk side support. And I used to have to run all over the building replacing toner. And it just, if I could have just like been more proactive instead of like, oh, it's an emergency, we're out of cyan, right? Like I could have done this yesterday and not had to feel like I was pressured.
Right.
So yeah, no, I love the idea.
So Don raised a question here, any concerns around network traffic encryption? And so I know we've got an answer for that.
So about encrypting so all of our traffic that we're sending from K-Translate into our APIs is going to be the same as any traffic you're sending us through APIs of your own, or if you're using any of our other agents, right? It's all the same technology. It all goes to our secure endpoints. And so, you know, that it's just standard SSL, just like everything else. As far as like encrypting and obfuscating once you get here, inside the logs UI, the logs platform for the syslog. If you, for some reason, accidentally send us something, we can work on dropping it or obfuscating it with you. And if there is encrypted traffic in your network that you want us to look at, we need to have a bit different conversation and figure out what your use case is for that, because I'm not positive your security team is going to love that idea. Cool. Other questions? Anybody? Awesome. Well, like we said, recording will be available probably as soon as we end this. I don't know how long it takes them to post, but pretty soon. Mark and I, will be around. We'll see you on GitHub for sure. Open those issues. Test this out. Get to the Instruct module. Go through it one more time. Right? Take your time. Really, really consume it, and don't feel so rushed like we did today. But hopefully you can understand kind of what we're trying to do here at New Relic, what we've accomplished so far, what our plans are for the future, and also really can appreciate how fast we can get you some value out of this. So definitely had fun. Thanks all for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.